Hello students, welcome back. In this video, I am going to talk about pollination and fertilization. What is pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma is known as pollination. Okay, so in plants, the pollination is classified into two types. So if the anther to stigma, that is the pollen grain is transferred from anther to stigma of the same plant, then it is called as self-pollination. You can see here within this same flower, there is a transfer of pollen grains. So this is a self-pollination. Okay. So if the transfer of pollen grains happens from one flower to another flower, this is called as cross-pollination. Okay, so usually because of the cross pollination, variation is usually observed. So let us look at what is there on the slides. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. It is classified into two types: self-pollination, that is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of same flower is called self-pollination. And cross-pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower is called cross-pollination. So usually the cross-pollination happens because of wind, water, birds and animals. So these are called as agents of cross-pollination. And what happens after pollination? So after pollination, what is happening in the pollination? So this actually, the stigma receives the pollen grains, right? The stigma receives the pollen grains. So what happens after the receiving of the pollen grains? So here this stigma has an egg cell in the center in its basal swollen part. These are called antipodals, and there will be diploid central nucleus, and here there will be an egg cell and two synergids, and it is covered by the integuments, and there will be a small opening. So this opening is called micropyle. Okay, so this is the typical structure of the carpel or pistil. So when the pollen grains are received on the stigma part, so many pollen grains will be received. Out of this, only few will mature. Okay, so why only few will mature? This ovary, it will send certain signals. Ovary will send signals, or it will produce some chemicals. So because of those chemicals, the desired pollen grain will produce, mature, and it will produce the pollen tube. So as the pollen tubes keeps on forming, so this pollen grain will produce two different cells. One is the vegetative cell and the another one is the generative cell. So this will turn as the male gamete. Vegetative cell will nourish it. This will provide nutrition to the generative cell. So this is what happens. So as the pollen tube keeps on growing through the micropyle region, it will enter and it will fuse with the egg cell. So this male gamete is going to fuse with the egg cell. Okay. So what is happening here? This is called fertilization. So the fusion of male and female gamete, that is called as fertilization. So this is what going to happen. So in some special cases, so there will be two generative cells. Okay, so there will be two generative cells. So what happens to this generative cell? It will go and fuse with the central cell. So male gamete, second male gamete plus central cell. Okay, so here if you see, the fertilization is happening for the second time. So this is called this is the second fertilization. So totally how many fertilizations has happened here? Two times, right? The fertilization has happened two times. So this is called, this case or condition is called as double fertilization. What is this case called? Double fertilization. So when two generative cells are produced by mature pollen grain, one will fuse with the egg cell and another one will fuse with the central cell. So this case or this condition is called double fertilization. So as I told, this central cell is diploid in nature. This central cell is diploid in nature. It will be in 2n condition, and this male gamete is in n condition. So how many nuclei are getting fused completely? Completely 3 nuclei are going to getting fused. So it will become 3n condition. So this is referred as triple fission. What is this called as? This is called as triple fission. Why it is called triple? Because 3 nuclei are getting fused here. So it is called as triple fusion. So now let us look at what is there on the slides in more detail. So the chemical signals are produced by the ovary. This leads to the maturation of suitable pollen grains. So once the pollen grain is mature, it will start producing the pollen tube, vegetative cells which will provide nutrition, and generative cells which is the male gamete. So this vegetative cell, this generative cell, it will reach the egg cell and it will fuse with the female gamete. So how it is reaching the egg cell? Through this empty space between the integuments, that is called as micropyle. So what is happening here? It is leading to the fusion of male and female gamete, that is called fertilization. So once the fertilization takes place, then the other events will start. But there is one special case over here that I have already explained. What is that? In some special cases, two male gametes are going to be produced. So one is going to fuse with the egg cell and the second one is going to fuse with the diploid central cell, right? So this condition is called double fertilization, or as 3 nuclei are getting fused, this is also called as triple fusion. So based on the question given, you need to write your answer. So there are two events of fertilization. So this is called as double fertilization. So what happens after fertilization? So after fertilization, to be make it very simple and precise, so flower is the future fruit. Means ovary is going to become the fruit. Okay, and ovules which are present inside the ovary, this will become the seeds. And what about all other remaining flower parts or flower structures? They are going to drop off. So the zygote, it will divide several times within an ovule. Okay, and it will form an embryo. There is nothing but the fruit. So this ovule develops a tough coat and gradually converts into the seed. Okay, so the ovary grows rapidly and it will finally forms the fruit. As I told, all the other parts of the flower, that is sepals, petals, stigma, stamens and style, they will fall off. So now let us talk about germination. So we have obtained the seeds after fertilization. Then how the seed germinates. Now we want to grow a new plant. Then how the seed is going to germinate. So you know that this seed contains the reserved food material. A lot of reserved food material is present in the seed. So why it is present? So that reserved food material is going to help the seed in the process of germination. So how the process of germination takes place? It happens in 4 stages. First stage is the imbibition. What is the first stage? Imbibition. Suppose, so this seed, it will take a lot of water. When you place it in the soil, it will take up a lot of water and it will grow in size. Okay. So once it is imbibed a lot of water, the process of respiration will start. So why the respiration starts? For the production of energy. That is nothing but ATP. Okay. So once the energy production starts, the cells inside it starts division. Okay. So with the use of this energy, so it starts dividing. Then what happens? Now the thing comes into the effect of light. Effect of light. So why the effect of light is important here? Because the seed, when it is germinating, it produces two structures. You can see here, one is green in color and another one which will be whitish green in color. Okay. So this region, the which is green in color, this is called plumule. When it is white in color, that is called radicle. So from this, the shoot system will develop. What is shoot system? The stem, branches, leaves and everything which will go towards the light. That is the reason I am talking about effect of light here. And from the radical, future root will develop. That is, the root system is going to develop. Okay. So once the effect of light has been started, it will keep on continuous. Divisions will takes place, and this is how the germination happens. So the development of a seedling from seed under appropriate conditions is known as germination. The development of a seedling from the seed under appropriate conditions is known as germination. So these are the different questions from previous CBSE question papers. So you can write answers on your own. So soon we will update a video of answers also for all the chapters. Thank you for watching. In the next video, I will be talking about reproduction in human beings.